listening to the Ones Ready podcast, a team of Air Force Special Operators forged in combat with over 70 years of combined operational experience as well as a decade of selection instructor experience. If you're tired of settling and you want to do something you truly believe in, you're in the right place. Now here's your host, PJ team leader, jiu-jitsu lover, meme enthusiast, and dad joke aficionado, Aaron Love.
Are you looking for the perfect rehydration drink to support your active lifestyle? Well, my friends, look no further than Hoist. Hoist is there for you whether you're going to use it pre-workout, in the middle of your workout in between sets, after workout, maybe if you're traveling, if you feel that dehydration headache sneaking up on you, or maybe if you just had a late night the night before and you need to reset and get back after it. With 3 times the electrolytes of traditional sports drinks with half the sugar and no high fructose corn syrup, no artificial preservatives, sweeteners, or dyes, Hoist is BPA free, it's kosher, and most importantly, it's made in the USA, baby. We all use Hoist, and I can't speak highly of it enough. Whether I'm doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, I'm out doing tactical operations, or I'm in the gym trying to make sure that I'm harder to kill, Hoist is always there to support me. With 5 delicious flavors you can pick up at your local grocery store or gas station. I love the dragon fruit, but you can try the orange, watermelon, peach mango, or strawberry lemonade. Hoist knows that you don't do normal things, and you might be out in the wilderness on a hunt, or you might be on a long ruck. Well, they hear you, and they've also got 3 delicious powder packs that you can mix in water anytime you want it. Peach mango, grape, and that fruit punch is that hitter for those packets. So go check them out. If you need IV level hydration for your normal every day-to-day activity, or if you're trying to get after it, working 2 workouts a day, Hoist is there to support you. Go check them out.
Welcome back to the team room. We want to say thanks to everybody that keeps coming back every Saturday. We're as surprised as you are, to be quite frank. I didn't know that this was going to be a thing 2 or 3 years later. And here we are at another Christmas in the team room with our good friend, Kevin Edgerton. You may know him as 18 Alpha Fitness. He's the man, the myth, the legend that is helping you get ready for the pipeline. We're going to hit all stuff, Kevin Edgerton, here in a second. But first, I want to talk about a partner of ours that we all love and we all actually use, except for Jared because his hair sucks. Anyway, Outer Eggs Pomade, probably the best pomade on the market. They have a whole line of hair care products. You know, if you're going to be in AFSPECWAR, what gives you feelings of power? Having ridiculously good hair. Apparently, there's an internet rumor that may or may not be a conspiracy theory that I actually have a hairpiece on. First of all, fake news. That's misinformation. I'm just glad that Trent shaved that terrible mustache of his. However,
I think a lot of people are.
I think a lot of people are. I think like for the good
world's a
of
better
marriage,
place now. Yeah.
And the kids are safe now.
The kids are safe now. I'm just glad that you could take your kids to school again and you don't have to stop 500 feet short and make them walk.
It's good for them.
That final spot. Go to Outer Eggs Pomade. Check them out. Use our promo code when you check out. Get that hair in order and make sure that you're looking good because that's always rule 1. Rule 1, look good, right? And you can do that with Outer Eggs Pomade. So, and also thanks to them for being partners. They've always been awesome dudes over there. So appreciate it. With that out of the way, we just want to say thanks again for coming back to the Ones Ready podcast. Go ahead and check out our Instagram page and check out the YouTube. Make sure you're subscribing, drop a comment, like, review, whatever. Thank goodness. We never know who's going to host these things. It's literally a crapshoot where we're staring at each other on Zoom. And today was just my thing. So that was off the rip. Kev, thanks for coming to the team room, man. What's up?
Thanks, Aaron. Glad to be here, man. It's a nice shirt you got on. Yours is different than mine.
I had to listen. I got some unreleased stuff. I do some things. I know some people, man. Hey, we always start with kind of like people. Tell us about yourself. You have a long career in special forces and in the Army before you got into where you are now. So just hit us a little bit of background with yourself and who you are.
All right. So, of course, I joined the Army immediately out of high school. At 18, didn't have a progression or didn't know what I wanted to do. So I went to the recruiter, and my dad was in the Corps pre-Vietnam, and that's the first person I went to hit up was a Marine recruiter. Came back home. Dad was like, "Nah, fuck that. You're not joining the fucking Corps." Literally, those were his exact words. He's like, "You are not joining the Corps." So he's like, "Go back. You're gonna go see all 3 branches." And I did. Air Force, my AFAS score was so low at the time that they said, "Pound sand, you're too fucking dumb." And then in the Navy, I was like, I'm not riding on no ship for 6 weeks, so I'm not doing that gig. And so the Army. And since my dad was an electrician, a self-employed electrician when I was growing up my whole life, I became a combat engineer. It was like the best job. I had 3 jobs. They gave me 3 offers. They were the best jobs in the world. So combat engineer, infantry, and then petroleum fuel handler. And those were the 3 that I got. And so, you look at the doggone combat engineer, it's like, oh, you build this stuff, you blow it up. No, you just build a bunch of minefields is what it ends up being.
Right.
And then you learn to hate that. So you want to move and, try to better yourself or, look for something else. And then that's when, I went and tried out for Special Forces.
Okay. And then did you have any idea what Special Forces was? So obviously you go in to the different recruiters. By the way, I don't know how many guests we've had. I had the same personal story. I went in and, tried a couple other places and everybody was like, no, that's stupid. Don't go do that. It's just a funny thing that it seems like we've all done. So you decided to go for Special Forces. Was it the 18 X-ray program or did you spend a little bit of time in the Army first?
Oh, yeah. So, well, joined the Army. I was pre-Gulf War, the first one. And I was in during the Gulf War. I was immediately after basic and AIT, I went to Germany. And before the Gulf War even started, I'd already, my goal was 3 years, get out, go to college, right? And I had, I was just doing it for the GI Bill because, again, my dad, we weren't the most financially stable place. I grew up in the south side of Chicago, which is a lovely place in Hammond, Indiana, between Gary and Chicago. So I went in for the GI Bill, point blank, right? And so when Gulf War started, they're like, you're stop loss. You can't leave, right? And I was like, what do you mean? I've already, literally, I had my schedule for January 20th of 91, right? And I was like, but they're like, but no buts, right? So they said, well, if you can show us proof, and this is pre-internet, fax machines, all kinds of stuff that you guys have no idea that you guys have the luxury of, right? So I had literally, my mom had to mail my schedule, show that I had already been accepted to school. I had a 4187 sign. And thankfully the brigade commander signed off on it, says, hey, you're free to go. You can go ahead and get out. Well, when you out process the Army, I was in Germany, and that's when there used to be 250,000 people over there. This is Cold War, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And it just basically ended before Gulf War. And so I fly back to Fort Dix, New Jersey, and I'm a good soldier at the time because I'm E4. I'm walking in and I got my manila envelope, the big thing, and I hand it to the lady. She opens it up. And she's like, what are you doing here? I was like, well, I'm ETS and I get out. I'm going to college in a couple of weeks. She's like, everybody, it's a stop loss. You can't get out. I was like, yeah, but I got a 4187 in that packet. And
yeah. She's like, give me that packet real quick. I got to put it somewhere. Yeah. Give me that
no.
Give me that 6-part folder.
Right. And she's like, well, where's it at? And I was like, it's in there. But I didn't, you know what I mean? Me being a good E4, I never opened up that packet to see if it was in there. I didn't know I needed that. Well, lo and behold, that doggone 4187 wasn't in there. And they're like, you got 72 hours to produce that. Again, pre-fax, pre-internet, pre-all this stuff. I got the 4187. 10 days later, they'd already reassigned me to stay at Fort Dix. So lo and behold, after Gulf War, I got out, had a break in service, went to Indiana University in the Northwest, and then I went down to Bloomington. Messed that all up, just doing dumb shit that most of us do. And when I was coming back in, I had, some goals. My first goal was to go SF. And then I don't know why, I really, to this day, I don't know why my goals were to become an officer. You know what I mean? Even after I became an officer, I was like, why did I do that again? But it was way back then that I, instilled it in myself that I wanted to go SF and become an O. And so 94, I came back in finally after the drawdown of the forces and everything. It took me a while. It took me like 3.5 years to get back in. But the whole time I was in the Guard, Indiana National Guard. Then I came back in and went and tried out. When I went and tried out the first time at selection, didn't make it. Broke both my feet. All 5 metatarsals on both sides were grade 3 stress fractures. Medic was like, the doc was like, hey, you can continue, which is gonna, you know what I mean, which people do, which you'll be hard broke for a year, if not longer, or I can recycle you. You come back in a year as a med drop. I was like, I'll take the med drop. And so I came back in a year, got selected, and yeah.
So what I'm hearing is a bunch of attention-seeking behavior got in your way the first time, and then you basically you took a year malingering, and then after that year of malingering, you came back. What now? Back in those times, and I want to explore this a little bit. You brought up a really cool point: is that you're really old, right? So you didn't have access to knowing like what SFAS was. You had really no clue what the selection was. I'm sure you got some G2. Like, how did you prepare for that first time going through selection at SFAS?
So we were handed a pamphlet. They had a DA pamphlet, and they're like, "Here, follow this plan." And you're like, "Okay, I followed." I mean, literally, I followed that plan to the T. But my first train up was totally wrong because my rucksack that I used was you know what I mean? It was like a Eberly stock baller. You know, I had at the time it was like a $300 backpack with the frame built inside of the ruck. And so
real quick, I got to do some math. So $300 in those, like today's dollars.
That's like 3,000.
3,000. Yeah.
No, I'm just saying to today, you know what I mean? To today's money compared to what it was back then. It was a lot of money.
That's just another old joke. That's all that was. Like, it's just me saying you're old.
Yes, I am old. But yeah, so I joined in 87. That's how old, 18 at that time. So you add those numbers up. Over a half a century, guys. Over a half a century. So when I went and got beat up the first time at selection with that baller, you know what I mean, that I followed that plan to the T. When I came back, I went to the Army surplus store and I was like, "Hey, I got this baller backpack, but and I called that the Cadillac. And I was like, I need this Pinto because this Pinto whooped my ass."
Pinto was a car, by the way.
Right.
Way back.
Yes.
It was a POS.
The greenback. Yes. So I took that and exchanged it. And I was like, "Hey, can I get two quarts with this?" And the guy was like, you know what I mean? Because he made out on the deal. And so I trained up the second time with the Pinto instead of the Cadillac. It hurt.
So is that what SFAS is a lot more ruck intensive, or would you say that's like the big, because, you know, when we talk about the Air Force pipeline, we lose most of the folks in the water.
Oh, yes.
Right.
So,
but like most of the folks at SFAS probably, like, where do they go?
Yeah. So in 21 days, they said we did 375 miles of rucking.
That's a little bit of rucking.
Just a little rucking, you know, with the backpack on. You got your back on the whole time. It's on you everywhere you go. The only time it's not on you is when you go to the bathroom.
And the most magical thing about walking that much is having that rucksack flop. It's the best thing in the world. Best thing in the world.
There's nothing better than that big green tip. Absolutely. It's you know, my favorite thing that a Norwegian ever said to me, and was like, "Oh yes, I have my Mark I NATO warming device." And I'm like, "You're what?" And he was like, "Yes, if you just put on this very heavy ruck and start walking, you will be hot no matter how cold it is."
Big facts.
Big facts. Yes.
So how much rucking did you do before you went back the next time? So you went the first time, you broke everything below your ankles. And then you understood that it was uphill both ways in the snow, the SFAS. Like what did you change and how hard did you go in your training? Did you just go, 100% all out, or how did you make it through the second time? Really, what was the secret sauce to your success?
So the secret sauce is don't train on a terrain that you're not even going to go on. Camp McCall is nothing but sand. And, you're like looking on a map, you're like, holy, why is this place nothing but sand? Right.
Right.
And I was at Hood at this time training up for it. So everywhere I rucked, when I came back the second time, I walked on grass. I didn't walk on the concrete because the first train up, I walked on the concrete. You know what I mean? I didn't know no better. I was heavy mech at the time. I didn't know that, you walk in the woods and shit like that. You just, hey, it says walk 8 miles. I walked 8 miles on the concrete. Well, the next time I walked 8 miles on trails as best as I could.
Yeah.
So the only other difference, physically wise, the second time I absolutely murdered it. You know what I mean? I crushed it. It was hard, but I knew, I had prepared myself mentally because I'd already seen some of it because I made it to like day 10 the first time.
Right. I think we see a lot of success of people that dip their toe in there and don't make it and come back the second time. And for some reason that, they know what's coming to a certain extent, and they're well prepared for it. So after you made it through SFAS, can you kind of walk us through the rest of the 18 series pipeline? What does that look like, or what did it look like for you?
All right. So once you get selected, you get to go back to your lovely unit at Fort Hood, like I did, and then you get orders for airborne school, and you go to airborne school en route to Fort Bragg. And at the first time, I was supposed to go to the Q course. So there's a lot of perseverance of this. If you guys don't understand, it took me a while to get there. All right. That was in '96 that I went to airborne school the first time. And I was en route to go to become an 18 Delta. And as you guys know, I didn't become an 18 Delta. I became an Echo. So the first time I was at airborne school on my fourth jump, the night jump, I snapped my ankle on the night jump.
Did you ever think that maybe this wasn't for you? Because
there's those times, you know what I mean? You know what I mean? But it's all about perseverance of who I am as a person. You know what I mean? I started wrestling when I was 8, football when I was 8, baseball at 5. I had cousins, you know what I mean, that pushed me. So, there's always setbacks, but I think it defines you more and better of who you are if you can overcome something than just going flying straight through. I think you learn more about yourself. Yeah. So after I broke my ankle, and there's a story with that at airborne school. So I come hobbling up because they had just finished their 5th jump. I hobbled up on my crutches, and Black Hat's like, "Hey, Edgerton." And I come up, I hobble up, and I got my folder. It's got my graduation certificate, my 5th jump on there. I'm like, wow. And at my time, my integrity is like one of those big things with me. And I was like, hey man, after everybody had left, I was like, I didn't make that 5th jump. I was in the hospital. I just broke my ankle. They're like, oh, they didn't even know. You know what I mean? There's so many people at airborne school. There's so many motherfuckers there. They didn't, you know what I mean? I could have literally hobbled back, went in my car, drove up to Bragg, and everything would have been fine.
And you could have just gone about your life. You could have just
gone about my life, right? It wasn't.
But we used to call that proficiency advancing. Like sometimes in the pipe, like in your OJTs, they were just like, all right, listen, you already showed me all the skills that you need. We're going to do a thing called proficiency advancing, and you get out of that event. That's what you should have said. You'd be like, oh man, I fell out of an aircraft so well 4 times that they just proficiency advanced that last.
Right. So but the person I am, and one of those life lessons that you learn about yourself. And so I went to the Black Hat, and he's like, hey, you got to go see the operations sergeant. Went to the operations sergeant, and he's like, oh, where are you going next? I was like, I'm going to the Q course. So I'm going to become an 18 Delta. And he's like, so he gave me the certificate, the airborne certificate. He rips it in half. He takes my jump log, takes a black marker, blacks it out, the 5th jump. And I was like, so what do I do now? And he's like, just go to Bragg. You're fine. If you get that 6th jump within, that 5th jump within 6 months, you're good, right? So I drive my happy ass up to Bragg and in a cast, and I get there, and 3 days later, I get a knock on the door, and this is when the 18 Delta compound was just like built, so it's baller. I mean, it's magnificento. You know what I mean? I'm like, a couple months into that new barracks, and I get a knock on the door, and there's a Green Beret step, and he's like, hey, you got to go see this lady on the 3rd floor. And so I walk, I go see the lady, and walk in, and the lady's like, hey, I got some bad news, and I got worse news. I'm like, what the fuck is that? Yeah, I got bad news and I got worse news. She's like, the bad news is you can't start the Q course. I'm like, no doubt. My foot's in the, I got a cast on. And she's like, the worst news is you got to go back to your original unit at Fort Hood. And that's when I started crying. Crying big time. You know what I mean? So I'm like, no. And I was like, but I thought I can get my 6th jump. She's like, the way the Army regulations are written, you can't go TDY en route from one school to another. And if you get hurt at the first one before starting the second one, you have to go back to your original duty station. So I went back to my original duty station, and 3.5 years later, after 2 surgeries on my ankle, I went back to the Q course and became an 18 Echo instead of an 18 Delta.
Now, did you pick? Man, I know a lot of 18 Echoes, and there's not many of them that pick the Echo route. Like they get upset about it because comms are a finicky thing. They can be.
Oh yeah, yes, it's. Harder than a motherfucker.
I mean, I think being a Delta is more difficult just because of medical stuff. But I guess if you have one of those mindsets that can go into medical and really enjoys it and that kind of stuff, like, okay, it's probably not as difficult. But comms is an interesting thing because you can be very, very competent at it. And for whatever reason, there's so many variables in it that if it's not working, I mean, it could just be so many different things.
So many.
And you're just problem solving. You're just troubleshooting constantly.
Yeah, the whole time, man. And that's you learn that. My first JSET that I went to Nepal, and our SAT went down. You know what I mean? Our satellite went down. And I'm like, well, fuck, I gotta reach back to Kathmandu. It's 380 miles away. So I did my angles, and I threw up a jungle antenna, cut the freak to the T. And I mean, this tree branch that I got a hold of, it took me like 30 minutes with this rock to try to get to raise up the jungle antenna. But when I did, I finally got it up, and I verbal talked, and the guy on the other end was blown away that I could, you know what I mean? And that was like one of those moments, you know what I mean, as an echo that I made that shot. But it's all about troubleshooting, because you never know. You know what I mean? That's why you got your pace plan with being an echo. You better be on. You better know how to, all four of those systems, you better be proficient at troubleshooting all four of those to get that communicate. Because if you can't communicate it, you're you know what I mean? It's, man, having to wait that 8 hours for that next shot is.
Yeah, it's crazy. And I mean, that's kind of at least a CCT's bread and butter. You know, you got to be able to make comms. And I don't think we don't hit as much of the HF as we used to, but we're at least in the pipeline, but we really are starting to dive into a lot of the HF now, or the high frequency stuff for those folks out there. One thing that I want to take it a little bit back to basics, just because our audience, they probably are well versed, but I don't want to assume either. Can you go through real quick what the difference is, and just a brief overview of what an 18 Alpha, 18 Bravo, a Charlie, Delta, and an Echo do? I think we'll stay away from Fox, maybe. I mean, we can, but
yeah. So on a team, there's 2 18 Bravos, which is he's our weapons guy, right? And he's responsible for every weapon system that's on the team. And then you got your 18 Charlie, that's the engineer. And in my opinion, the engineer has the hardest job, just because he is responsible for the inventory of that whole team. Oh. And yes. You know what I mean? And he has to know where every piece of equipment is at all times, right? And then after the Charlie, you got the Delta. Delta is the medic. There's 2 of them sometimes, usually just one. And he's like a doc in any third world country. He'll do anything. I pulled, once that same JSET, we were in Nepal, I pulled more teeth out of people's mouth than you can even, and it was disgusting teeth. You just, you know what I mean? And but the doc is like, just get a hold of that and pull it out. Okay. So look, a Delta, and then you got an Echo, which is the comms guy. Okay. And there's supposed to be 2 of those. And then the Fox is your intel guy. And that's, to become a Fox, you'd have to be on a team already. You have to be a Bravo Charlie or an Echo. And then you go to an intelligence course for a little bit longer. After the Fox, you got your Zulu, and your Zulu is a team daddy, right? And he's at usually E7, E8. Usually it's supposed to be an E8, but they'll promote a real strong E7 to be that. And then you got your 180 Alpha, which is your warrant, who's an executive officer. And if you got a good one, I had probably the best one, in my opinion. His name was, I'm not going to say his name, but anyway, he was a great guy, because he was a team sergeant who was on the Sergeant Major's list, and he's like, I want to become you know what I mean? I want to stay on the teams longer, because he knows once you come to a doggone Sergeant Major, he's no longer going to be on a team. So he'd already put his packet in, knowing that he was going to get picked up, and stayed on the teams probably an additional 10 years. And then you got your 18 Alpha, who's the detachment commander, and he's in charge of the team. So all those numbers, that adds up to 12 men on the ODA.
Yeah. It's funny you bring up the Charlie thing, because I always saw the Charlie as you're at your forward operating base, and the Charlie always seems to be almost like the camp mayor, if you will, because anything that doesn't fall into the lane of weapons, medical, comms, everything else is kind of on the Charlie. So when you saying like, hey, he's got the most difficult job, accountability for a bunch of knuckle dragging soft dudes that, right, wrong, or indifferent, we lose stuff, we break things all the time, but just to be just kind of like, oh, well, that doesn't fall in the lane of the Bravo or the Delta or the Echo. So I guess I got it, contracts, ops fund, that
food.
Kind of stuff. Food,
explosives.
Everything falls onto the Charlie, man. I feel terrible for him. So, and you still don't understand why or know what the root of you going officer is?
So, I mean, you know what I mean? In life, there's a point that when I went back in, and I'll explain that it ties in with my fitness on how I am when I am now. So I told you I had that break-in service, right? Well, 3 days into my break-in service, my dad had just quit smoking 3 months prior in like December. So I got out in April, I think it was April 21st, 91. And, he wanted to start working out. And so we went to my cousin's gym. He was a gym manager at Omni 41 Fitness. And we went and worked out. And at the time, I mean, I was just learned how to really lift 3 years. You know what I mean? When I went to Germany, I was lifting heavy, you know what I mean? I was bigger than Aaron. And
he ain't that big.
I know, but you know what I'm saying? I look better. How about that? But anyway, we went and lift, and we were lifting, and then we went and played racquetball. My cousin came and we were playing racquetball because my dad liked racquetball. And we're walking up the stairs to get changed out in the locker room. My dad grabs my arm and he's like, "Go get your cousin." And I was like, Dad doesn't do that. So I took off, went and got my cousin, and my cousin Dennis. And my cousin Dennis is, we start running back, and he runs by the front desk, and he's like, "Call 911. My uncle's having a heart attack." And and we went upstairs, and my dad, the ambulance got there, and he had a triple bypass. He had started smoking when he was like 12, and he was 48 at the time. 3 months prior to that, he had stopped. And then diets at the time. We're not, again, different times, right? And he was in this, at that time, he was working for Ford. So luckily it happened while he was with somebody, because he could have been in the Ford plant that, hundreds, big ass plants, and he could have just, and nobody would ever saw him. But since we were there, so that was a journey that started the fitness. And then, it gave me like a direction of why I wanted to do some things. But that moment right there really defined of who I am, especially with the fitness thing. I went, cuckoo for my Cocoa Puffs after that with fitness.
It's funny that it's not funny what happened, but it's interesting because it's a common theme that I've noticed, that there's a lot of times there's either you're brought up and you never change that fitness kind of lifestyle, or there's a very transformative event that happens in somebody's life, whether it's that it happens to them or it happens to somebody that they love and care about, and then it changes them. And that was obviously that for you, and it set you on a really healthy trajectory, to which, I mean, now look at you, you're doing 18 Alpha Fitness. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that, how you got into that journey and what motivates you to do that?
Yeah. So, after that incident, I was at Hood, and of course we'll go back to, selection, right? The second time I went to selection, I'm trying to figure a bunch of things out. And I'd go to, like I said, I became a gym rat to the fullest, but the gym rat doesn't equate to really good on long distance movement, right? So you gotta, I'm sorry guys, lifting heavy weight and carry a big pack doesn't equate to the same thing, right? You got to learn that lifting heavy weight is for one thing and moving long distance is for another. Right. And so I got pretty good at figuring things out. People started coming up to me, and then, I went and got my personal trainer and certificate in like 98, just to start helping other people too, because, they start, when gym rats, when you go into the gym, a bunch of people start seeing you all the time. They start asking you questions and stuff, and they want, hey, what do you do about this? What about that? And then, you're like, well, shit, I'm giving all this free advice. Let me try to make something out of it. And so I did. And that started the journey. And then during OIF3 was one of those other aha moments, right? I was in Baghdad, and prior to that, we're doing chest and tries still, I can move long distance, but I already got selected, And I'm at the time in a 3rd Battalion 10th Special Forces group, and I'm with a friend of mine. His name is Kevin as well. His name was Kevin Graham. And he's like, hey, we're going to try this new fitness regimen. And I'm like, sure, I'm game for anything. You know what I mean? At the time I'm training jujitsu, and I was like, I'll do whatever. And he's like, BJ Penn does it. I'm like, get the fuck out of here. You know what I mean? He's like, BJ, my good friend, BJ Penn, recommended it to me. And I'm like, you don't know fucking BJ Penn. He's like, no, I really do. And I was like, okay. So we pull it up, and you know what I mean? It's all online. You just follow it online. And I'm like, what is this? And you know what I mean? And it's that now some people despise it, but it's one of those other things that was one of those aha moments was it's CrossFit, www.crossfit.com. First workout, I think it's called Nancy, 5 pull-ups, 10 push-ups, 15 squats, as many rounds as you can in 20 minutes, right? And me and, so we got another guy in, it's all 3 of us, right? And we got enough pull-up bars, and we're like, oh, yeah, okay, let's see how fast, what we can do here. Man, after 20 minutes, we're all 3 laying on the ground, like, what just got hit with a bunch of bricks? Like, I thought I got, 10 rounds, just knocked the fuck out, right? And I was like, holy shit, in 20 minutes, I can get all this work in, right? So, I was like, this is amazing. So I took that. I did CrossFit that whole rest of that deployment probably twice a day. I came back, and at the time I'm in Colorado, and I was never really a real good runner. Well, we had, of course, right when you come back from deployment, what do you got to do, Trent? Take an APFT, right? Or go running with coach.
Yep.
We'll talk about that. And so
we're not going to talk about that.
We're not going to talk about that. So I had to take take a PT test when we got back in Carson at altitude, right? So, Iraq is sea level, went back, and I ran my fastest time ever. I ran a 12:10 at, when I got back, and I was like, whoa. And so, again, you do that. I start deep diving, and I was interacting with Lauren Glassman at the time. It was Coach Glassman's ex-wife. And I was like, hey, I want to learn more. She's like, well, just come on out. It was a couple of months later to become a guest at one of the seminars. And I went and did a seminar in 2005. And that took me really on the trajectory of fitness as well.
Did that play into you? Yeah. Well, I want to talk about too, because you went on this fitness journey. I'm assuming, were you still E-man at that time?
No, that when I did that, I had already switched over, became an O. I was a lieutenant at the time.
I just wanted to not gloss over the fact that you had to go through the pipeline twice, and kind of what that was like going through the second time. Well, nothing was easy for you for some reason. No.
Yeah, some reason not. So the first time, let's go back to Peaches' comment about being an echo. So when I went through, we had to learn Morse code. That is brutal. It's a whole nother, it's like learning a new language. And you had to test out at a 13 on the, listening and writing it and then tapping it, which I finally did. So being an E-man, the whole communications course it's not easy whatsoever, because that trouble system. And then you go get tested. Like they sent us, we had to make shots from Oklahoma to North Carolina on all pieces of equipment. And at the time we had Morse code too. So you were out in the field set up and had to send and receive that, which was difficult. And you know what I mean? The pipeline was, it took me 2 years to get through that. And so within the pipeline, you get selected, right? After selection, you go to airborne school. After airborne school, you go to small unit tactics. Small unit tactics is back at Camp McCall. That's 30 days. After small unit tactics, you go to your specific MOS portion, which was Echo at the time. And that was 6 months for us at the time as well. Then after the very specific, you go to Robin Sage, right? Which is 31 days where you combine all of those MOSs, and then you learn this magical terminology thing, or how to break down an op order from the alphas called MDMP, which at the time was like, what the fuck is this? You know what I mean? When you're enlisted, it's the first time introduced to MDMP, but it's a process that you really define. You can get way down in the nitpicking of the weeds of a mission, and it's a great system, and it's a system that's in part for all DOD to get things down, right? And you go do Robin Sage, was great, and then after Robin Sage, you go to language school, and my language at the time was Thai, so I Pu Pasai Nitnoi, and then that's 6 months, and then after that we did SEER school, and then when I was enlisted, I went to 3rd Battalion, 1st Special Forces Group. And then I went to OCS, and then became an officer. Oh, the OCS, and after that, you go to Officer Basic School, and then you have to. Once you become an officer, you don't go straight back to SF. You don't magically as a lieutenant become a controller or a PJ. You got to wait 3 years before you submit your packet to go back to become an 18 Alpha. Before you become an officer, because they want you to have some time so you understand what the hell what you're getting yourself into.
Well, yeah. Go for it, Trent. I'm processing.
It's a lot of courses. I mean, it's just crazy that you went through selection twice to begin with. You broke all the bones in your feet, and then you snapped your ankle at airborne, so you had to do that multiple times. It took you years to become an E-man. Special Forces guy. Then you have to go through these other courses where you're kind of treated like an idiot again to become an officer. Then you have to be a regular officer, which, no offense to the regular Army, but it's probably not what you're looking for. I wasn't in the
regular Army, so let's clear that up. I got extremely lucky. So
okay.
I had orders for Fort Carson, right, to go to 3rd ID. And you get 10 days, right? When you got to go look for a house. My first stop when I arrived at Carson, I went straight to 10th Special Forces Group, and I was like, "Hey guys, I got that long tab. You guys got a job, you know what I mean?" And at the time, the whole group was in Iraq, and the major is like, you know what I mean, and he's like, "I got to reach back. They're in Iraq. They're in the war, you know what I mean?" And lo and behold, long story, that's another story in itself. But the last day that I'm supposed to, sign in the next day, I called him and he's like, "Bro, I haven't heard anything." And I'm like, fuck. So anyway, the next morning I go to sign my paperwork to the person at Fort Carson. My wife calls me and I step out and she's like, "Hey, that major from 10th Group just called." And then I called him. He's like, "We got a by name request." And I was like, Yes. And so I got to go to 3rd Battalion 10th Special Forces Group, and so 2 weeks after that, we did a train up, and then I was in Iraq to meet up with the rest of the group.
I think the moral of that story is no one takes care of you better than you take care of you. You don't always have to accept the circumstances that are thrown your way.
Right. Yeah, even though you have orders for something, you just go and try. You got to try. If you don't try, you never know.
I mean, it did used to be that if you had orders, like say you're going to Bragg, right, or Pope, and you had orders to combat control school, but you wanted to go to the 21st STS, you could just, before go checking in to combat control school, you could go over to the 21st and go, "Hey, I'm checking in." And because, you're right, time. Not really emails or not, right. It's common.
Oh, I tried the email thing.
Yeah. And then you just kind of like, as soon as you get checked in and in processed, even though it's not your unit, they're like, "Well, I'm good. Sorry." And then combat control school is like, "Hey, what the hell? Where'd our dude
Where's my
go?"
body?
Yeah, exactly.
We had a guy that got orders to Pope and came over. We used to be over on Bragg, and he just came over and started sitting in our office until it became official. And it was, one of those things. It's just like, "I'm not going over there. I work here now." We're like, "Oh, you work here now."
For all those folks that are hoping that that's still the case, that is not. Like no. that those days have gone a long time ago.
If you get orders into AATC, you will take that seat. Otherwise, anyway. So did you start working there before you went back through selection? How did that work? You'd already been through selection again?
No. So when you're already long tab, you do not have to go back through selection.
Okay.
But let me. That depends on what general is sitting at Bragg at the time. right? And there's some courses that they're like, up, you're good, right? Like, and, you know, I already have my own. You don't have to. When I went back through, I didn't have to do selection again, and I didn't have to do small unit tactics again.
Okay.
But when I went through the first time, O's that were, had the power of tower, they had to come, I mean, they're already tapped out, came back as an O. They had to do small unit tactics. And they were like, I mean, they're dying because they'd already been to Ranger school. You know what I mean? They know small unit tactics inside and out, but it all depends on what general is sitting at Bragg, because, it's all about bullets and how you change things up.
Yep. Another thing is some of the information that we give out is accurate today.
Right.
And may not be accurate tomorrow.
Oh, my accuracy on SFAS and all that stuff is way outdated. I haven't.
Just trying to point out that these things are fluid sometimes. And so
Yes.
Don't always get mad at us if it doesn't work out the exact way that you think it should.
Yeah.
And I want to I really enjoy talking about your time in the Army, but we don't have forever.
Right.
And you eventually got out, became a civilian, ended up working for the Air Force. Kind of what happened there?
Yeah. So on my, when I'm getting out, when I became an ODA detachment commander in like 2010, we finally got a strength coach, right, and the Thor 3 program, and I was in Okinawa. And my coach comes in, and he's a good friend of mine now. He's probably my mentor. And I'm like, what the fuck are you going to show us? You know what I mean? It's like, I did all this stuff, what are you really going to show us? But, it turned out that he was there to help, make sure movement patterns are correct, make sure that you're not overtraining, make sure everything, right? And then the physical therapist was great. And at the time, you know what I mean? I had a couple of things. Like, I was a pre-med student as well. I just want to throw that out there. So I applied for PA school, PT schools, which I was accepted to all, but multiple. And then my strength, he knew about it, and he's like, "Hey, you want to go do that?" That's, he's like, "Why don't you just go get your master's degree and become a strength coach, because it's common." You know what I mean? And I was like, yeah, I think I prefer that over, medicine, because I just getting tired of Motrin as a. But anyway, so he's like, just get your master's degree, and so I worked on that my last 18 months. I blasted through my master's degree, and I got real fortunate on USA Jobs. There was a position at Lackland Air Force Base. I applied, and I got an interview, and at the time when I did the interview, there was a gentleman on the board that owns a CrossFit gym here locally in San Antonio. And we talked CrossFit nonstop, you know what I mean? And I told him my story, and I got the job.
Was Jason?
Yes, it was Jason.
I was going to say, it had to have been Jason.
Yeah.
Shout out to CrossFit Lackland.
Yes, CrossFit Lackland. Love Jason. So, that brought me to Lackland. And for 7 years, I trained everybody that came through the pipeline that was at what's called Battle or the Swamp, or I think it's SW Development now, whatever it's called today. But whatever. When it was Battle, it used to be really fun because it was me. I was the head chief in charge of running guys 8 hours a day. And then when it became the Swamp, things changed. And when things change, you adapt or you move on. And about 3 years ago, I started 18 Alpha Fitness. And by the way, I'm a Go Ruck cadre as well. And so, you start, people start asking you stuff again, you know what I mean? I just went back to my personal training days, and I was like, well, if you're going to ask, I'm going to, you know what I mean? It's my time, and my time is money. And so I started giving programs out. People started paying me. And back then I was doing Excel spreadsheets to people. They pay for something, and I send it to them. And every week I was doing these Excel spreadsheets, and I'm like, man, that's a lot of damn work. You know what I mean? Because every week I'm creating something new. And then, you do a bunch of research, and, so I got onto a platform. It's called Trainerize, and I use Trainerize, and I got, now I got my own app through Trainerize, but all the videos that are in there, they're me. I did all the movements, or explain the movements, or just a demonstration of the movements. And and then August of this year, I told Air Force, you can have all that. I'm going to do solo and start doing 18 Alpha Fitness full time. And it's been great. And I love what I do. My program is unique in its sense, because I've been there more than You know what I mean? I have nothing against other strength coaches that's out there in the community, but I don't think anybody has the experience. That's 34 years of DOD, if anybody wanted to know that as well, that I've been a part of. So, yeah.
It's, you have a unique aspect, and I want to touch on a little bit because I've noticed just as of recent with, you consider everything that's on social media, everything that's we have a large veteran community now. I couldn't even possibly tell you what the, millions there are out there of retired veterans and active duty now. And something that I've noticed, and that, talking with some other folks that have been out, is that, and I've said it on the podcast as well, the veteran community can actually be kind of a toxic place to exist in. And it's unfortunate, because you would think that as you had a commonality, shared experiences, that you would be, putting a hand down, picking somebody up, reaching out, helping out. Like, even if there's competitive entities out there, whatever, it doesn't matter. You should be, like Aaron always says, that a rising tide raises all ships, right? Has that been your experience since you've been out, or have you had more of a positive experience? Because I do because it's something that I ask people, whether it's on the podcast or not. And I get mixed reviews, and it's kind of a bummer as somebody who is kind of heading towards the end of their career. So what has been your experience with that?
Mine hasn't been too bad. You know what I mean? I got a couple of local companies here in San Antonio that, and I gear towards my brethren, you know what I mean? Regular Army guys, I have nothing against you. Regular Air Force, I have nothing against you. I love you. You guys put on the uniform, you guys sworn in. But, the guys that I associate with here locally that are SF guys, is Long Tab Brewing is here locally, where Trent, I took him first time. We got a company called Triple Nickel. He's a prior 18 Alpha as well. And he runs it's a diversity company, and, they sell t-shirts. So their message is totally different than, say, the BRCC message, right? Because it's a minority company, and it's a minority ran company for a very specific reason, because they're targeting a very specific, person, right? And then, I've interacted with the Black Rifle Coffee Company guys, and that, from my experience, they help the veteran community more exponentially than anybody across all boards. I don't care who you are, right? But then you get, one thing that comes out, and God forbid, if you say something towards one political party to another, it's like, Jesus fucking Christ. All that just goes out the window. Let's not care about what they've done for everybody. One guy said something, maybe, and then it's like, oh, you guys all suck. So yeah, it's it's got its good and its bad. And I take that for each what it's worth, right? If I don't, I know JT, and I know that's a good motherfucking dude. I know him personally. I've talked to him, and if I have interaction with them, and hell, I'm going to support you. If I talk to you, I'm going to support you. You know what I mean? But my thing is that rising all ships, right? And so I've had that. You know what I mean? It's like, hey, I'm going to try to help promote your stuff. Can you, you know what I mean? And if you see, you know what I mean? It's not even going to be a verbal agreement, but if you see me doing things for you, I hope I get the reciprocation, which a lot of times I don't get that same reciprocation. You know what I mean? And that kind of irks me. You know what I mean?
Yeah. There doesn't need to be a contract or
right.
Hey, you and I shared some emails, now we can go forward, or anything like that, man. I'm going to help you out.
Right.
Not because hey, let me tell you something, I'm going to help you out. No, it's a look, man, I see you're doing some good things out there. You want a shout out? Okay, cool. We'll do a shout out. Or hey, Kevin, can you provide a program for this guy, or it could be whatever. Hey, I'm going to buy some Black Rifle coffee for friggin', a friend of mine, or Trench Coffee, or Alpha Brew, or whatever. It can,
right.
It just helps everybody out. And there's no reason. And man, I sound like such a hippie right now. I really do. And I get it. But it kind of bums me out when I see people just tearing each other down just for the sake of tearing each other down. And that happens a lot in the veteran community. We've been recipients of it just from our own community.
Oh, I know you guys have.
Because
I would hear, because I'm a fly on the wall, right? Back, you know what I mean, when I was working, and I can hear things, and I was like, why are you guys got your panties in a bunch?
Yeah,
because you guys are helping the future generation. You know what I mean? And that's what I'm trying to do. I want everybody to make, you know what I mean? But we know everybody can make, but I want to provide the best service I can fitness wise to get these guys ready. You know what I mean? And my goal is to get these guys ready. Your goal is to give as much information as you can to help get those guys ready for SW. You know what I mean? Mine is to get them ready. You know what I mean? And so our mission set aligns a lot. And if anybody else comes in and tries to, bash, I give two shits. And then, oh, by the way, I'll choke 99.9% motherfuckers out any goddamn way. You know what I mean? So it doesn't really matter, in my opinion. If what they say, they can say all they want to, but at the end of the day, this computer keyboard thing, I can prove it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, it's and like I said, I took it down kind of a woe is me path, but at the same time, like I just, it's one of those things where, man, if you ain't got anything good to say, like just shut up. I mean, I don't know. And to the new generation that's coming up, like that's hearing me say that, like that tide is changing. Like there are more and more people out there saying the exact same thing that we are about, hey, time to start picking people up, time to start like building people up instead of tearing them down. And, Aaron just hung out with graduates. I think they're going to be PJ graduates. Is that right, Trent? I know he was just hanging out with some graduates, and he said that this new generation of dudes coming in is phenomenal. So for all of you old dudes out there that are worried about like this new generation, they're solid.
We were that same gender, when we came to, what I mean? Hey, it's going to be okay at the end of the day. You know what I mean? Yes, standards might change, but it ain't going to change what our mission is when we go down range. You know what I mean? That's what, yeah,
but they're so much smarter than we are, or were, and are. They really are. They're so much smarter.
So much smarter.
Well, I think that's one of the good things about the positive side of the community is you get people that have the experience, and then you can start vetting the best resources for everybody. I'm not telling people to come to me for a fitness plan, right? Like I worked with Kev. I've seen firsthand what he brings to the table and the success that's come from that, from the students. I've seen, all these other companies and all the good stuff that they're doing. And so all we do is that we try to let them know all the options that are available out there that are vetted options that are positive, and make that next generation better. And I think that's what everybody's trying to do right now in our little community of people that we push. And I know that's what Kevin's doing. You push a few other companies as well and work with everybody. So really that's the name of the game, is making that next generation better than we were. And not just sitting around and being like, oh, these young kids and their stupid, screens and all this other stuff. Like, yeah, they're different, but like, so are we. Who cares? Yeah. But
I got teenagers upstairs. Yeah, they're different. You know what I mean? Than I am. But it's at different times. You know what I mean? If you can't adapt, then just let the train keep on going. Don't try to bring that train. Don't try to knock it off this track. Just let it keep on going.
And I did want to, we did talk a little bit about what it was like at battle, but like your experience training the Air Force guys, like we have some shared experience there. The difference is you have obviously programs for people that want to become SEALs or Air Force Special Warfare or the Green Beret or Rangers. What are the major differences, or what do you see? And mindset wise, is there any difference?
So mindset wise, there's really no difference in my opinion. You know what I mean? Well, there is a little bit, because that water, until you guys, if you never trained water before, the water is the great equalizer. I'm sure it's been said many times. If you didn't know, I did pre-dive, and I lasted probably like 7 days, and I was like, I'm done with this.
Yes, I got that above Kevin. Yes,
you guys got that. You know what I'm saying? And water is the greatest equalizer. That's a whole different mindset, and you really have to know how to calm your whole system down. You know what I mean? You got to bring that sympathetic state down to a parasympathetic state when you're in the water. But the mindset is the same, right? You want to become a better version of yourself and show that you can. So for any special operations, because you come into, you know what I mean, you go regular, you can go anything and it's just regular, and then you want to become special. Well, it takes a different mindset, and that mindset, you have to push yourself physically to be able to do those things. And if you're not physically ready to do that, it's going to break you in half.
Oh,
yeah.
Sorry, Trent, my bad.
Yeah.
A little delay there.
But like your training, the way that you do your training, we see a lot of things, and it's one of my little pet peeves where people are like 100% all the time, and I'm like, there's a time and a place.
Yeah.
Just to get a little bit of fitness advice out at the end of the podcast.
Right. Yeah. So every day isn't, you know what I mean? Again, I love CrossFit. I started that in 2005, but every day doesn't have to be a WOD. Every day can't be a WOD. You can't go 100% every day, because if you do, you're going to break yourself off. You're going to get injured exponentially. So it has to be an even kill across the board. And that's with, you know what I mean, with your strength training, with your cardiovascular system, with your heart rate variability, with your sleep. And sleep is probably just as important as the work you do. Your mobility, how you recover, how you eat, everything that you do has to be detailed out to become a better version or be ready for the rigors. Because all those variables that I just put out there, the cadre have control of that when you're at selection. They have control of your sleep. They have control of your food. They have control of the water they let you have, to drink, but they have a lot more control of it. And all they're doing is just testing to see if they take those variables away, how you're going to adapt and overcome.
No, you're 100%. They control everything. And I'm glad you throw in sleep in there, because that is something that so many people, especially younger people, could just kind of toss out the window, because you're like, now screw that. I'm going to go out partying, or I'm going to stay up an extra 2 hours and finish this movie. Right. Hey, that movie's not going anywhere. Get some sleep. Because it's so important. Sleep will, it'll change. That's one
variable that they control at selection. At our selection anyway.
Yeah, they control it anyway, but at the same time.
No. When I went through, we were only given that many hours a night. And then during that time, you had fire guard and you had to be up for like 15 minutes. And so, because you had to check the board, because they don't tell you what's going on and what time it's happening. It's on the board and they just write it on there. And everybody better be out there ready to rock and roll to execute whatever it's on that board. So when you control that one variable, that's sleep, man, and then you're only getting 4 hours of sleep a night, you're not recovering. You can't recover in that amount of time.
You're not recovering, and you're not mentally there either. You just kind of, you do get used to it, but you're still not operating at peak. You are still in a deficit, and you're functioning, you're able to think somewhat, but you're nowhere near what you normally would be if you were getting your full amount of sleep and recovery. Yeah. So, all right, Kevin, well, we're going to wrap this up. I know that we lost Aaron about 15 minutes in. He's in the trenches still.
He needs an echo. Aaron needs an echo.
Exactly. He needs an echo.
Yeah, he needs an echo. Yeah, that's all right. He's a J. He just flicks people. He doesn't know how to do the comms.
I can't wait till he sees the end of this. You suck.
He's going to be so pissed, because he's probably the most nerdiest one of all these systems than all of us.
Well, in the interest of what I was talking about earlier in terms of building people up, go ahead and put out your social and your whatever website that you want people to come visit you at.
Yeah, so my website is fitness.com. My social media is the same at 18A_fitness on Instagram and on Facebook.
Awesome. That is at 18 Alpha Fitness. And man, you're putting out some good stuff. And like I was saying, like you said, actually, there's a lot of different folks out there that are providing different things. Kevin, you're top of the game. we also have Brian on here as well. That's doing great things with beapj.com as well. So like, go out there, find who connects with you. And we really appreciate you coming on. You guys got to go check out Kevin. In fact, I love the videos where you're actually bringing in your sons. Like that's super cool.
My middle my middle one just stood next to me. The wife was like, "Did you just fucking grow?" And he stood. I was like, "Holy fuck, Jesus, he's even bigger. He's like probably 6'2" now."
Well, yeah, my daughter is about my height now, which is not saying much, but right. I mean, she's 14 and 15 now. She's 15 now, and my height. So. Yeah, she's gonna bypass me, which again, so maybe she'll cross the 5-foot barrier. Maybe. I don't know. Maybe. But no, we really appreciate you hanging out with us, and everybody go check them out. And for all of you out there, make sure you like, subscribe, and hit the notification button on YouTube and Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and please leave a review. We appreciate you tuning in. If you got any more questions, definitely shoot us a DM on at One's Ready, and then you can visit our shop at onesready.com, and we appreciate it. You guys have a good one. Train hard.
Later.